I love caffeine, and I mean love it. It is always in my routine to go to Starbucks in the morning when I can and get myself something with caffeine, usually coffee or tea, since caffeine is found in almost everything these days. I mean, come on, who doesn't like caffeine? I will explain how caffeine is a drug, its toxicity, and its implications of it. The word caffeine originated from the German word café and the French word café, both directly translating to mean coffee. The chemical breakdown of caffeine is carbon 8, hydrogen 10, nitrogen 4, oxygen 2. Since caffeine and coffee are both derived from the Arabic word gawe, the origins of the words reflect the spread of coffee into Europe via Arabia and Turkey from northwest Africa. Then coffee trees were cultivated in the 6th century. Coffee began to be popular in Europe in the 17th century. By the 18th century, plantations had been established in Indonesia and the West Indies, and by the 20th century, caffeine had become the biggest cash crop on earth. Caffeine was first isolated from coffee in 1819. It is also found in tea, in cocoa pods, and in cocoa and chocolate products, and in cocoa nuts used in preparation of Coca-Cola drinks. In the ilex plant and in guarana seeds as an ingredient in energy drinks. The caffeine content of coffee beans varies according to the species of the coffee plant. Beans from Coffea arabica, grown mostly in Central and South America, contain about 1.1% caffeine. Beans from Coffea robusta, grown mostly in Indonesia and Africa, contain 2.2% caffeine. Caffeine was first extracted from cocoa beans into its purest form, a white powder, in the 1820s by a German scientist named Frederick Ferdinand Reich. Today, caffeine is easily extracted, used to make a variety of products that are consumed on a daily basis. Extracting caffeine from coffee to produce decaffeinated coffee and caffeine powder can be accomplished in many different ways. A few of these processes are no longer used because of the health risks, environmental impact, cost, and flavor changes that were associated with the solvents. Common solvents that were used include chloroform, benzene, and benzene. There are now 3 main processes that have replaced the use of previous solvents. Water extraction. During the water process method, you place the coffee beans in water and heat to boiling point. This removes the caffeine from the beans. It also removes any flavor. Now, you treat the mixture with solvent, which absorbs and evaporates the caffeine. Finally, you put the beans in the mixture again to reabsorb the flavor it lost in the original process. Many manufacturers collect the caffeine from the charcoal filter and resell it for use in products such as soda and over-the-counter medications. The supercritical carbon dioxide extraction. Supercritical carbon dioxide has been used in the industry to extract caffeine from coffee beans since the 1970s. Caffeine has a low solubility in supercritical carbon dioxide, and for this reason, a co-solvent, either water or ethanol, is used, which triples the caffeine solubility, having accelerated the extraction. And under these conditions, CO2 enters a supercritical state. The water can then be filtered and caffeine can be isolated into its purest white powder form. Extraction by organic solvents. Research has found certain organic solvents such as ethanol acetate that have a lower health risk and environmental hazard than chlorinated and aromatic organic solvents used years before. These solvents are used to dissolve caffeine and are then rinsed away, leaving the coffee being decaffeinated. The use of caffeine started when people of the Stone Age found that ingesting parts with certain plants, they could stave off drowsiness and increase their own alertness. The majority of caffeine use arises out of the East, including but not limited to China and the Persian world. And Arabian legends explain that caffeine was used to ward off sleep. Tea continued to grow in popularity in China and was often prescribed as medicinal purposes as well. During the 1820s, coffee was considered by several doctors to be a medicine that reduces fever. Before it was extracted to become pure caffeine itself, it'd be in the form of cola nuts, cocoa beans, and tea. Cola nuts would be chewed in many West African cultures to restore vitality and ease hunger. The cocoa bean was used by ancient Mayans in a drink called chocolate, often seasoned with vanilla and chili pepper. Chocolate was used to fight fatigue due to its theobromine and caffeine content. Caffeine's original purpose has not changed over the years, as the stimulant is still being used to ward off drowsiness and create medicine and foods. Today, caffeine is used in coffee, and the world's primary source of caffeine. Caffeine content in coffee varies widely depending on the type of coffee bean and the method of preparation used. The next most popular beverage containing caffeine is tea. Also contributing to caffeine content are growing conditions, processing techniques, and other variables. Caffeine is also a common ingredient in soft drinks such as Coca-Cola, originally prepared from cola nuts. Soft drinks typically contain 10 to 69 milligrams of caffeine per 12-ounce serving. Chocolate derived from cocoa beans contains a small amount of caffeine. The weak stimulant effect chocolate may be due to a combination of theobromine and theophylline in addition to the caffeine. Caffeine can be effective for medical purposes such as migraine headache following surgery, and tension headaches. Caffeine can also help with asthma as caffeine appears to improve airway function for up to 4 hours in people with asthma. Athletic performance can increase physical strength and endurance and may delay exhaustion. It might also reduce feelings of exertion and improve performance during activities such as cycling, running, and etc. Drinking beverages that contain caffeine is with lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. It appears that the more caffeine that is consumed, the lower risk. Other uses of caffeine include increasing blood pressure in people with low blood pressure after eating, taking 200 milligrams of caffeine to improve memory, reducing pain and weight loss. The systems affected by caffeine are your nervous, urinary, excretory, gastrointestinal tract, and cardiovascular. The short-term effects are feeling more alert and active, restless, excitability, dizziness, anxiety, and irritability, dehydration, and needing to urinate more, higher blood pressure, faster breathing, heart rate, and headache and lack of concentration. The long-term effects are osteoporosis, high blood pressure, and heart disease, heartburn, ulcers, difficulty sleeping, infertility, anxiety, dependence on caffeine. The psychological effects are an intake of just 100 milligrams of caffeine can induce such symptoms of dizziness, anxiety, agitation, and irritability, restlessness, insomnia, and headaches in some people. The psychopharmacological effects. Adverse effects that have been attributed to typical levels of caffeine consumption, such as increased nervousness, anxiety, tachycardia, and an increase in blood pressure. The overdose symptoms. Irritability, anxiety, restlessness, confusion, delirium, headache, insomnia, seeing flashes, ringing, seizures, trembling, twitching, overextensions, increase in sensitivity to touch or pain, rapid heartbeat, irregular rhythm, or rapid breathing. Abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, possibly with blood, frequent urination, and dehydration and fever. Caffeine is used by billions around the world. The global consumption of caffeine has been estimated in 120,000 tons per year, making the world's most popular psychoactive substance. This amounts to 1 serving of caffeine for every person every day. Caffeine can be used by anyone to ward off dryness or to use as medication prescribed by the doctor. The cost of caffeine varies among places. For example, if you are buying caffeine on its own, 125 milligrams of caffeine would be priced at $146.19 in the US. If you were to buy caffeine in products such as coffee, the price may be cheaper. Since coffee is one of the most popular drinks around the globe, it is not an exception that caffeine is frequently used around the world every day. The controversial issues concerning caffeine. Caffeine has been put to speculation on whether it should be allowed to be used legally. It was recognized that coffee contained some compound that acted as a stimulant, resulting in caffeine being subject to regulation. In the 16th century, Islamists in Mecca and in the Ottoman Empire made coffee illegal for some classes, and it was banned in Sweden in various times between 1756 to 1823. In 1911, cola nuts became the focus of one of the earliest documented health scares when the U.S. government seized 40 barrels and 20 kegs of cola syrup in Tennessee, claiming the caffeine in the drink was injurious to health. Although the judge ruled in favor of Coca-Cola, 2 bills were introduced to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1912 to amend the Pure Food and Drug Act, adding caffeine in the list of habit-forming and deleterious substances which must be listed on a product's label. The Food and Drug Administration in the U.S. currently allows beverages containing less than 0.02% caffeine, but caffeine powder, which is sold as a dietary supplement, is unregulated. Some Seventh-day Adventist Church of God adherents and Christian Scientists do not consume caffeine. Some of these religions believe that one is not supposed to consume medical or psychoactive substance, or believe that one is supposed to consume substance that is addictive. Caffeinated beverages are widely consumed by Muslims today. In the 16th century, some Muslim authorities made unsuccessful attempts to ban them as forbidden intoxicating beverages under Islamic dietary laws. In conclusion, this is what caffeine is: a drug with toxicities and implications to go with it. So don't overdose on caffeine in this day and era. Drink fewer things containing caffeine.